The film begins in the year 2154. The Resource Development Administration, or RDA, recruits Jake Sully, a paraplegic ex-Marine. His twin brother, Tom, who worked for RDA, was killed, and now they need Jake to replace him for the Avatar program on a planet called Pandora because of his twin and his genes are the only people who can activate Tom's avatar. Jake agreed and was placed in a cryogenic sleep chamber, where he slept for nearly 6 years while the crew traveled to the planet. He learns that Pandora's atmosphere is toxic to humans, and that its lands are ruled by a species called the Na'vi. Marines worship the goddess Mother Nature away to explore the Earth. Humans temporarily transfer consciousness to avatars. The Na'vi hybrid is created by humans and can only be activated by its biological owner. Jake and Norm entered their avatar bodies for the first time, and Jake felt elated at being able to walk and run for the first time in years. He then meets Trudy, a fighter pilot assigned to the Avatar team, who introduces him to Colonel Miles Koryach. Colonel Koryach offers Jake a deal. He will join the Avatar group on their expedition. In return, the Colonel will ensure that the company funds the replacement of Jake's legs. Jake agrees. He joins Grace and Norm as an escort on their research expedition. While the scientists searched for the sample, a vicious beast named Thanator attacked Jake, tearing him away from the group. He narrowly escaped and soon found himself abandoned in a forest trying to survive until a female Marine named Neytiri rescued him. Neytiri feels strongly attracted to Jake's brave heart, but thinks he is too stupid and naive. The seed of the Soul Tree falls on Jake, and Neytiri takes this as a sign to bring him to her clan, the Omaticaya. Jake meets the leader and priestess of the Itukan and Mohawk clans, who are also Neytiri's parents. After most of their liberation, Mo decides to take Jake in and asks Neytiri to teach him their way of life. Jake settled in for the night with the clan and was immediately returned to the Avatar Stimulator. He reported everything he had learned to Grace and Colonel Courage. The Colonel gives Jake 3 months to convince the Navy to move, or they will bomb their home tree. Grace is suspicious of Jake's relationship with the Colonel, so she moves the team to a remote outpost in the floating mountains of Pandora. Over the next 3 months, Neytiri teaches Jake how to control Na'vi. She tells Jake that once he is ready, he will have to choose his own Ikran, a winged monster that Navis has hunted, and he will finally become a warrior. Jake learns to track and hunt wild animals, and also begins to understand the spiritual connection between all beings on Pandora. Soon, Jake has feelings for Na'vi and begins to love Neytiri. After achieving his first apparent victory, he, Neytiri, Suti, and the other navies travel to the floating mountains to claim Ikran for their own. They reach the Ikran nest, and Suti orders Jake to choose first. To select one, the Iraqi must first select it by attempting to kill it. He killed one of the beasts and bonded with it using the nerve endings in his hair. Neytiri pushes them off the cliff, forcing Jake to fly with his Ikran to strengthen the bond. While piloting his Ikran, Jake and Neytiri face a near-unfortunate encounter with the Taurik, a powerful dragon-like beast that the novice fear and worship. Only 5 navies in history were able to tame and ride a Taurik, including Neytiri's great-grandfather. The 3 months ended, and the group returned to base. Colonel Courage gives Jake an ultimatum, but he asks the Colonel to extend it until his last ceremony is over. Then he becomes one of them, and he can persuade them to move. The day of the ceremony arrived, and Jake was finally accepted into the Omaticaya clan. Now that he is one of them, Neytiri takes Jake to the Tree of Souls. The Tree of Souls is one of the most sacred places of the Na'vi people, where the memories of their ancestors are preserved. They can access these memories by attaching their nerve endings to the fibers of the tree. This is also one of the places with the largest unobtainium reserves. Neytiri tells Jake that he can now choose a wife. He then proposed to Neytiri, who happily accepted. Under the Tree of Souls, the two hugged each other and connected their nerve endings, bound together for the rest of their lives in the eyes of their goddess Away. At dawn, Neytiri was awakened by the sound of a large machine. A bulldozer arrives from Ardea, destroying the Soul Tree. Neytiri tries to wake Jake, but he is now out of stimulation and remains unconscious. When Jake woke up, he saw Neytiri frantically dragging him away. He signaled the bulldozer to stop, but it continued plowing. He then climbed onto the machine and started destroying the cameras. but the crew started shooting at him. They ran away while Neytiri sobbed as he watched the machines destroy their sacred place. Meanwhile, ERDA records Jake destroying the camera and is able to identify him. Jake and Neytiri return to Hometry, where he tries to convince ITUCON to relocate for the clan's safety. Suti attacks Jake, accusing him of hooking up with his fiancée. Neytiri admits this and says that this cannot be undone because they are now bound in front of Alway. At their outpost, Norm tries to stop the soldiers as they remove Jake and Grace from the simulator, but he is too late. Jake takes the opportunity to make his final plea, but he and Grace pass out before they can say anything. They are brought back to the facility, and Jake's true loyalty is revealed through a video recording that Novice would never abandon their home. Grace and Jake regain consciousness in their avatar forms, and Jake begins to tell them about RDA's plan. He later admitted that he was sent there as a spy, but now everything has changed. Neytiri searched for survivors and found her father with a fragment on his chest. With his last breath, he entrusted her with his bow and arrows and made her promise to complete her mission. Jake finds her in the rubble, but Neytiri pushes him away and tells him to never come back. Back at the facility, Jake and Grace are once again taken out of the simulation and captured when Jake's avatar body collapses amid the debris. While the avatar group was in their cell, Trudy took them out. They hijack one of the helicopters and escape. They moved higher into the mountains, where the GDDR could not easily reach them. With nowhere else to go, Omatakaya was forced to take refuge in the last remaining soul tree. As they waited for the answer to their prayers, they heard a gust of wind behind them and gasped in horror as they saw the Turek flying towards them. This feat aroused Navi's fear and respect. Jake asks Suti to join him in his war against humanity, and he agrees. Jake then takes Grace to Navi, asking them to save his life. Grace's wounds were too deep, and she died before the ritual was completed. But Jake knows the battle is far from over. With Suti, they gathered the Omotake and then went to neighboring clans to gather Navis from the plains, seas, and mountains to join them in the fight for their homeland. By the end of the day, they had gathered over 2,000 Navi at the Tree of Souls. Through intel, Jake learns of RDA's plan to bomb the Tree of Souls. He then came up with a plan to lure them across the floating mountain, then attack them there before they reached the sacred place. As soon as the aircraft groups went into action in charge of the terrain surveying mech suits, the Navas opened fire first, flying around the seaplanes and shooting them down with their arrows. They shot down several helicopters, but the company's arsenal was too strong. Outside, they fired at the Navis with their weapons, taking down many of them. Colonel Courage discovers Jake during his travels and begins shooting at him. Suddenly, Trudy and her helicopter intervene, and she shoots the colonel, allowing Jake to escape. Suti performed a heroic action in the main seaplane, taking out several men unloading the bomb before it was shot down and crashed to the ground. The Navi army was overwhelmed as they retreated deeper into the forest. Within seconds, various Pandoran animals rush into the machine as the Ikran streaks across the sky, destroying the remaining ships. Neytiri interpreted this as a sign of help from Awa. Jake then lands on the main seaplane carrying the bomb and knocks out their machine guns. He ran around the plane, skillfully dodging gunfire and throwing a grenade into one of the engines. The machine crashed down and exploded in the middle of the mountain. He threw a few more grenades at the colonel's machine, from which Gurash escaped using a mechanical suit. The grenade explodes, and Jake is thrown into the sky and falls to the ground. The colonel survived the blow and began stalking the outpost. Jake is able to hold him back, breaking the knife and the protective glass around the suit. The colonel gasped and then began aiming at Jake's real body. He broke the outpost's windows and destroyed the simulation devices. Jake stabs him in the neck while the colonel drags his body. Neytiri broke free and shot an arrow straight into the colonel's heart. She launched another arrow to complete the kill. Meanwhile, Jake emerged from the simulator, dragging his body to reach the gas mask. Neytiri realized what was happening and she climbed inside the outpost and put Jake's gas mask on. Returning to his avatar form, Jake and Neytiri find Suti, who begs Jake to kill him so he can die a noble death. As he breathed his last, Suti recognized Jake as his brother and gave him leadership. Jake accepts this gratefully. The war is now over, and the Navis have won. The facility is destroyed and the humans are returned to their ships on Earth. Jake has now become the new leader of the Omadikaya clan. On his new birthday, he went to the Tree of Souls with Neytiri, where they performed a ritual to transfer his consciousness to his new avatar body. Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed this film recap and want more, subscribe now, like, and share captivating stories with your friends. Tell me which movie you'd like me to summarize next. See you soon.